Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, your host on this Saturday, September 4th, 2021. And if you want additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov/Alaska. We have plenty of information online. We have a number of items in our headlines across the state today. First of all, a significant meteorological advisory as it pertains to aviation interest, a volcanic ash advisory for the volcano Sapachanoi, which is located west of Adak. We'll have a graphic on that in just a moment. Otherwise, the state overall is rather cloudy this weekend with areas of rain or scattered, mainly light showers, but there's been some moderate to at times briefly heavier rainfall in the southern panhandle around Ketchikan, where over an inch of rain has fallen today. And we're going to see an intrusion of some briefly colder air across the northern half of the state, starting with the northwest and spreading eastward as we go through the day Sunday and especially Monday into early Tuesday. Otherwise, the extended outlook as we head toward mid-September, still looking a little bit more on the mild side, eastern half of the state, a little wetter in the west, especially the southwest areas there toward the lower Yukon Delta. But here is the volcanic ash advisory for Sapachanoi, and that's primarily for flight interests there west of Adak. The plume is drifting northwest to southeast between a surface and flight level of 8,000 feet. This advisory, as this broadcast, is in effect through Saturday evening, though it could be extended if the activity persists. So if you are planning a flight there near and west of Adak, stay tuned and look up at the latest conditions and advisories before you head out. Otherwise, on the satellite imagery, we have low pressure that's impacting the panhandle. That is the most significant feature, bringing us some briefly moderate to heavy rain there. And otherwise, across much of the state, we have weaker areas of low pressure persisting overall across the Gulf with some lower cloudiness, light areas of sprinkles or some light showers. Back to the west, cold front is working its way inland and weakening. It's waiting for a better push of some colder air that's moving through the Arctic coast, the Russian Arctic coast, in an area of low pressure of the far eastern Russia. They'll be moving through the Bering Strait area here as we head overnight and early Sunday. Otherwise, with the exception of the volcanic activity west of Adak, it's relatively quiet across the western half of the Aleutians. So here's the weather map. Numerous, mainly weak areas of low pressure. The most notable one is located there, impacting the southern panhandle with areas of rain, it's lower cloudiness. And then back toward the west, we do have the cold front working its way into the interior and weakening, waiting for a better push of some colder air there along the Arctic coast of Russia, with low pressure there that'll be heading east-southeastward out toward the Bering Strait. And this is going to bring in some colder air along the northwest coast as we head into the day on Sunday with some additional precipitation. Precipitation could be in the form of a mix or even some snow in the higher elevations there, the western Brooks Range. And as that feature pushes inland, I'll show you the cooler temperatures expected here as we come up here on the temperatures map rather shortly. Otherwise, just low pressure kind of lagging across much of the state. There's even enough instability. There could be an isolated rumble of thunder along the Alcan border in east central areas Sunday afternoon. And then on Monday, another low is going to be lifting out of the North Pacific, taking aim toward the eastern Gulf, and that could bring additional rainfall to the panhandle later, especially Monday night into Tuesday. And then a push of milder air coming in on southwest flow could try to at least a brief ridge build into south central and along the Alaska Peninsula could bring a little better weather Tuesday into Wednesday across southern portion of the state. So here are the expected low temperatures, lower 50s across the panhandle Sunday morning, generally mid 40s to around 50 degrees south central areas. Temperatures Sunday afternoon, upper 50s to near 60 in the panhandle. Pretty much the same case too, near 60 Anchorage, Glen Allen down toward Seward and the Kenai, as well as Kodiak, and then back for lows Monday morning, generally near just above 50 in the panhandle, mid 40s to near 50 degrees. Though the other side of the Alaska range could see some lows, McGrath there at 39. And then Monday afternoon, we're looking for temperatures near 60 degrees in the Panhandle, and generally around or maybe slightly above 60 there across much of south central areas. Sunday morning lows will be mid-30s along the northwest Arctic coast to mid-40s there, east central areas along and south of the Yukon River. Temperatures still could hit 60 Yukon Flats area on over toward Northway, but toward the northwest coast cooling down to near 40 there. And Seward Peninsula generally low to mid-40s. And then temperatures Monday morning will be near just above freezing many areas along and north of the Brooks Range, including the Arctic and northwest coast, with still some lower 40s showing up there along and south of the Yukon River and east central areas to about the Alaska Range. Monday afternoon, notice there along the Brooks Range, North Slope, highs generally confined mid-30s to maybe lower 40s, with still some lower 50s showing up there along the Yukon River, east central areas. And across the southwest, Sunday morning lows generally near 40, mid to upper 40s out along the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. High temperatures Sunday afternoon generally in the 40s there around Norton Sound, and then back up into the interior up the Kuskokwim River Basin, and then mid-50s along the Aleutian Chain. And then temperatures Monday morning, look for upper 30s to around 40 degrees, Emanak on up toward Nome, and then mid-40s or so there to near 50 degrees from the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay on over out toward the Aleutians. And temperatures Monday afternoon could squeak out upper 50s to near 60, Dillingham, King Salmon, southward there across the Alaska Peninsula. Quick check of the temperature outlook from September 10th through the 14th. As of yesterday, it had the area for the 9th through the 13th, including south central areas, and it's going to retreat northward up toward the Arctic coast, North Slope there as we head toward mid-month. And still looks like there's a potential for precipitation to average a bit above normal, especially there in the southwest, including the lower Yukon Delta. So that's how things are shaping up now as we head in toward the middle portion of the month. Overall, though, as we would expect, general slow cool down as we head through September. Hopefully we'll get some clearer skies to get a peek at any northern lights that may be coming.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's time for aviation weather, and if you are planning a flight through the course of this weekend, Sunday and into the day on Monday for early next week, hope you have a safe flight. And taking a look at the most pressing information, as of Saturday morning, we do have a volcanic ash alert for the volcano Semi-Sapotnoy there in the central Aleutians. So if you're flying around ADAC, keep that in mind. It's for the potential for volcanic ash between the surface and a flight level of 7,000 feet. That's in effect through at least early afternoon Saturday. So that advisory could be extended into later Saturday or perhaps even early Sunday. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, flight weather here for Sunday morning, IFR conditions across the southeast, portions of the interior near the Alaska Range on up toward the Brooks Range, and then out over the Bering and also along the Arctic coast. We'll see pretty widespread MVFR conditions across much of the interior Sunday afternoon, with still areas of IFR, the inner coastal mountains there of the southeast to the north central Gulf Coast, northeast Arctic coast, central Brooks Range, and out over the central and western portions of the Bering. Monday morning, look for IFR conditions from around Prince William Sound through Yakutat on through the southeast Panhandle, as well as central eastern parts of the Alaska Range, much of the Brooks Range, and then back through the central Bering and the central and western Aleutians. And Monday afternoon, still fairly widespread MVFR conditions across much of the mainland, with pockets of IFR still along the northern Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle. So past conditions on Sunday, Anaktuvik, IFR conditions will prevail, as will they at Adigan. Dropping southwestward, Lake Clark should generally hold onto MVFR, though Merrill will see IFR conditions should improve to MVFR later Sunday morning and afternoon. Also IFR to MVFR at Rainy Pass, as well as Windy Pass as we round out through the central Alaska Range, and then heading east, Isabel and Metasta should generally have MVFR conditions on Sunday. Tenedos starting out with IFR but becoming MVFR later in the morning and afternoon, and Portage IFR, especially on the east entrance, becoming MVFR as we go into Sunday afternoon. And for Sunday, Chilkoot and White in the northern Panhandle will hold on to IFR conditions. Freezing levels across the mainland are generally between 6,000 and 8,000 feet central and eastern areas on down toward the Panhandle, with an intrusion of some colder air up there around the Chukchi Sea, northwest coast, and Seward Peninsula, where freezing levels drop down to 2,000 feet, and generally at 4,000 feet there, the southwest YK Delta areas, and then coming back up to near and just above 10,000 feet through the western Aleutians. Best likelihood for some icing will occur in the southeast Panhandle between 11,000 and 18,000 feet. Elsewhere across the Gulf and northern Pacific between 10 and 16,000 feet, falling back to between 7 and 12,000 feet as we get toward the Seward Peninsula, west side of the state, Bering Strait, and northwest. Jet stream level winds, 30,000 foot winds, southwesterly, 125 knot jet max there around Vancouver Island there, British Columbia, and then an area of 100 knot upper level northwest winds from around St. Lawrence back toward the Russian coast. And as we drop down to 9,000 feet, we see southwest winds 40 knots there. So in south of the Panhandle there in the British Columbia, as well as out over much of the central Bering, winds from the northwest, 35 to 45 knots, and also some 40 knot northwest winds in the Chukchi Sea approaching the northwest coast. And down to 3,000 feet, some winds there to 40 knots there in British Columbia, north of Vancouver Island, 35 knots there in the Alaska Peninsula and off of the west coast, and then an area of 40 knot northwest winds there entering the lower Chukchi Sea at the 3,000 foot levels on Sunday. Quick check of turbulence potential. There could be some turbulence isolated to considerable moderate turbulence there in portions of the southern Panhandle into British Columbia along the coastal mountains, surface to 5,000 feet. And then looking back toward the west, there could be some pockets of turbulence on Sunday. There east of Norton Sound back toward St. Lawrence between the surface and 4,000 feet, as there will be a push of some colder air working its way in from the northwest. That colder air will overspread the northern half of the state early next week. So that's your flight weather. If you have a flight planned, please have a safe flight.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip.
Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How's the day going?
Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference. Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently. In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're one match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in them.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management. Fire Sciences Lab, right over here. So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
What? You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. Tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fires basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's going to be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haisley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
In our marine weather segment, I'm going to start out with a different vantage point looking at the North Pole where the ice is, because it's generally off the Arctic coast of Alaska. Still a little ice there lingering along the Russian Arctic coast. And we're about a couple weeks away from the maximum northern retreat of the ice before it begins the slow process of rebuilding southward as we head through the later fall and winter time frame. So that's the way things look right now. Pretty open water there, though, along the northern northwestern coast as well as the Arctic coast. Looking at Sunday's marine forecast, in the wake of low pressure there in the Panhandle, winds will be southerly to 20 knots, waves 4 feet. Inner waters way, though, it could be as high as 8 feet there at Dixon Entrance. And then generally southwest winds 15 to 20 knots with waves of 6 to 8 feet there along the Gulf Coast. And then for Monday, another low is going to be approaching from the southwest. We do expect winds along the Gulf Coast to be increasing to near 35-knot gales with waves building 10 to 15 feet across the central and southern portions of the Panhandle there along the Gulf. Inner waterways, we'll see winds a little more variable up there to the north in Lynn Canal, but northeast to southeast as high as 25 knots there at Ketchikan and the mouth of Dixon Entrance. And then looking to south central areas on Sunday, variable winds around 10 knots, Prince William Sound, the north end of the central Gulf there. And then across Cook Inlet, winds are going to be upwards to 15 to 20 knots there toward the mouth with waves of 4 to 6 feet with winds south to westerly. They are also just east of Kodiak and waves generally around 4 feet off the Kenai. Variable winds, the northern end of the Gulf around 10 knots up there through Prince William Sound, waves generally 2 to 4 feet. And again, winds could be westerly upwards to 20 knots with some 6-foot waves at the mouth of Cook Inlet. Across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds will be going from west to northwesterly. Look for west to southwest winds 20 knots there, Shelikof Strait, waves 5 feet. But otherwise, winds will be out of the northwest around 20 knots or so with waves of 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side and 4 to 5 feet on the Bering side. On Monday, look for variable winds along there through Shelikof Strait, waves 3 feet, but winds becoming more southwesterly along the Alaska Peninsula at 15 knots and waves 4 to 5 feet pretty much either side of the Gulf side or the Bering side, though maybe a little less there, a few feet there toward Bristol Bay. Across the Eastern Aleutians, winds will generally be northwesterly 15 to 20 knots and waves 4 to 6 feet either side, and around westerly winds 15 to 20 knots, 4-foot waves west of Adak. And then look for Monday's winds to become southwesterly across the Aleutians at 15 to 20 knots, waves generally 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side, and 4 to perhaps as high as 6 feet once you get west of Adak toward Kiska. Across the west coast, winds between St. Paul and St. George all the way north, Nunavik Island to south of St. Lawrence will be westerly around 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet, though turning southwest to south there in Norton Sound with waves a few feet. And then on Monday, overall southwesterly winds across much of the area with winds of 20 knots and waves 4 to 5 feet. Along the Arctic coast, a bit variable winds there. At 10 to 15 knots, waves generally a few feet. And then along the northwest coast into the Chukchi Sea, winds will turn a little more west-northwesterly around 20 knots with waves of 5 to 6 feet. And on Monday, look for winds to be northwest there, Prudhoe Bay to Katovik, and then generally westerly along the northwest coast at 10 knots and waves 4 feet in the Chukchi Sea down through the strait, though tending to try to turn a little more southwesterly there north of St. Lawrence Island. And here's the weather map on Sunday. We'll continue to see a weakening cold front push its way inland across the northwest interior. That's going to provide the cool down for the early part of the week, especially north of the Yukon River, including the Brooks Range and North Slope areas. And then as we go through Monday, you'll see a low pressure approaching the panhandle from the northern Pacific, and that'll ride northward up through the eastern portion of the Gulf, bringing additional rainfall and a little stronger winds, perhaps some near gale force winds there impacting the southeast, especially as we go through Monday and into Tuesday. Otherwise, there along the northwest coast, look for cooler temperatures. And that does it for the weather this evening. That's all the time I have. I hope you're having a good Labor Day weekend, and I'll be back again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.